All right, good morning. In December of 2003, I attended a life-changing missionary conference. It's hosted once every 3 years. It's called Urbana. It's happening again this year. And if you're at all interested, I highly recommend you checking it out. The OCO would love to give you information and maybe even a scholarship. Well, the final night of Urbana includes a call to risk. Being a sucker for altar calls, I committed to a year of missions after graduating from college. After looking into various missions organizations, though, I realized there's only two kinds, really. There's short-term missions trips, which last 2-3 months max, or long-term missions trips, where they want a commitment of at least 3 years or more. Well, that next summer, 2004, I received my dream internship as an actuary. This is what I had been striving for the last 2.5 years. I loved the internship and was offered a full-time job starting any time through September of the following year. Just to give you an idea of what was involved, my summer internship package included compensation for just 3 months of over $40,000. I had great colleagues. I would have the ability to seriously impact a Fortune 500 company, an excellent opportunity for promotion. Since there weren't any missions organizations that wanted me for more than 3 months but less than a year, I figured maybe this is my sign that 2 or 3 months was an acceptable compromise to my commitment. Through SMP, I signed up for 2 months in Guatemala with an organization called Casa del Alfarero. In the words of Chaplain Blackman, I'm sure you all know what that means. But in case you don't, it's translated into Potter's House. The organization seeks to help those who live in and around the Guatemala City garbage dump gain immediate relief through healthcare and food, and longer-term relief by providing education and small loans to help people start their own businesses outside of the dump. I also accepted a job starting as an actuary, planning to start after my return in August. Near the end of the 2 months, I was approached by the leadership at Potter's House, and they asked if I'd consider staying an additional 10. I called Allstate and asked if I could postpone my start date for 10 months. And they said they understood it's for religious reasons, but if I chose to decline the initial offer, I'd be welcome to apply again in 10 months, but no guarantees the job would still be there. Seriously, why was this happening now? How did Potter's House learn about my promise to God? To risk. To expose someone or something valued to danger, harm, or loss. Example? A dream job. Question, what is most important? What is valuable? Is it worth it to risk this dream job to fulfill a promise no one even knows about? Wheaton College, how often do you face this situation or a situation representative of it? Should I take this amazing job opportunity, great salary, great colleagues in a company I believe in, or should I work as a missionary in a garbage dump in Guatemala City? Life's hard decisions aren't primarily about choosing between good and bad. More often, they're about choosing between better and best. So my first question for you is, what is actually at risk? What has value? Well, what do you fear losing? What would you say right now is your greatest risk? Maybe it's not getting a good job after school, failing a class, maybe doing something foolish and losing the admiration and respect of your peers. Possibly it's disappointing the expectation your parents have for you, or maybe it's not finding a spouse. Well, my question for you is, do these things ultimately actually satisfy? If you ask Olympians what their greatest fear is or what their greatest risk is before the games, many of them will tell you it's losing. Not competing as well as they can. But I've been reading recently about an interesting syndrome called post-competition depression syndrome, which most commonly affects the gold medalists at the Olympic Games. It's a depression that applies to people once they work so hard to achieve something, and upon achieving it, they realize, or they ask themselves, what's next? New York Times bestselling author David Brooks recently wrote a book called The Road to Character, and in it, he describes the resume virtues. These are the virtues your mom and dad would love for you to have. Worked hard in school, got straight A's, got a great job that impacted the world and made change for good, wrote a best-selling book, things that you could definitely get hired if you had enough of. He contrasts these with what he calls eulogy virtues. These are the virtues that people will talk about at your funeral. He was a good man. She really loved her family. They were generous with their time. What really matters? What has value? Lewis talks about this in some of his writings, and of course we always have to talk about Lewis. So he says that we're often drawn to invest in that which will endure the longest. For many of us, much of the world, we feel like our lives are the thing that we need to invest most in. We spend 20 years of our lives, 20 more for you guys, getting educated, preparing for the life ahead. And if that's what lasts the longest, then that makes sense. Others feel drawn to civilizations, believing that these things are going to last far after they are dead, 500, maybe even 1,000 years, getting involved in politics or trying to change society around them. Others look even longer term, creating art that will last for aeons, or trying to push the frontier of science. Well, let me read to you a quote by Lewis from The Weight of Glory. He says, "You have never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals with whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit." I think Lewis hits the nail on the head. I think to Lewis, relationships are the greatest risk. So who else should we look to find where value lies? Why not the creator of us, Jesus Christ, the very word which was spoken that called us into being? In his Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 6:19-20, he says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal." At its core, the Bible is a story of relationship. Before we were created, God, the triune God, existed in perfect relationship with himself. The story of the first Adam and Eve is the story of the breaking of relationship between God and man. The Old Testament is a story of God pursuing the Israelites in an intimate relationship, which he most commonly refers to in the context of marriage, in a story of a faithfulness by God and unfaithfulness of his people. Jesus Christ, the second Adam, is a story of the restoration of relationship that was broken in the beginning. And in Revelation, we read about the fulfillment of that relationship which each one of us desires for most strongly in our hearts if we let ourselves reflect for long enough. I believe it's for this reason that when Jesus is asked, what is the greatest commandment? He talks at the core of the most important relationship, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And second, to care about the only other thing in this world which is immortal, and that is relationship with our neighbor. So my second question for you, you might be saying to me, Enoch, I get this intellectually. I know that long-term all that matters is my relationship with God and my relationship with others. But as soon as I leave this building, when I go home, the tyranny of the urgent is going to take over, and my fears of the risks surrounding me right now are going to take over my heart, even though my mind desires to pursue that relationship with God. So the question is, how do I get my heart to view my relationship with God as the most important thing? Well, human wisdom says that treasure follows our heart. If you want to know what someone cares about, look where their treasure is going. But Jesus says the exact opposite. In his next verse on the Sermon on the Mount, he says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Let me give you an example of this. Babies are interesting. We seem to love our own babies, but apparently other people find my baby so repulsive that I have to pay them to take care of her. Why is my heart with my baby and not yours? Well, I think Jesus is right. I think it's because I invest my treasure with her. I give her my time, my thoughts, my energy, my emotion. I would die for her. What is your treasure? What do you value? If you place them at risk with the world, if you spend your time, thoughts, energy, effort trying to become famous, writing a book, publishing a paper, trying to get the best job, earn an A, win the approval of your parents, your heart will follow. You won't be able to help yourself to not care about the world. But if you put your treasure with the things of God, your heart will follow and you will care. Let me give you some examples of this in the Bible. Nicodemus and Jesus have a conversation about what must be done to enter the kingdom of heaven. And I believe that Jesus calls Nicodemus to risk that which is most important to him: his status in society, his knowledge, his learning, by becoming like a newborn babe, by becoming born again. He calls Nicodemus to risk and tells him that his heart will follow. To the rich young ruler, his answer is different. When the rich young ruler asks, "What must I do to enter the kingdom of heaven?" Jesus calls the rich young ruler to risk his greatest treasure, his wealth, his place in society with Christ. Sell all you have, give to the poor, and come follow me. Your heart will be with the things of heaven. Finally, to Enoch Hill, Jesus said, will you risk this dream job, this thing that you've pursued the last 2 years, that you've poured your heart into obtaining? Will you risk that with me so that your heart will rest with the things of heaven and not with the things of earth? Now, this isn't about a job in a missions organization. For some of you, your treasure might be being adored by the church, might be being viewed as a righteous person, sacrificing to gain the praise of man. Maybe your call to risk is your call to risk that treasure with Christ by working at a greedy organization, to be salt and light there. All right, let me give you one last example. God is no hypocrite. I often wonder why his heart continues to be with us after all that we've done. I think the answer lies in Jesus' statement. God put his treasure, his one and only Son, with us, and his heart followed. So Wheaton College, what is your treasure? What is that thing that is at risk of usurping the perch of Christ on the throne of your hearts? Christ was calling me to risk that which I treasured, a dream job with him, so that my heart would follow. That wasn't the first time he did this, and it won't be the last. Wheaton, what do you value most? If you want your heart to join your mind in desire for Christ, then he is calling you to risk. Will you place your treasure with the things of heaven? I promise you, if you do, your heart will follow. Fortunately, with SMP, I took a risk. I quit my first job, a job I hadn't started, and was rewarded with a deeper love for Christ as I watched in awe the ways he moved and loved me through the people living in Zona Tres around the Guatemala City garbage dump. Lives were transformed, including mine. Oh yeah, and Allstate? They ended up calling me back the day after I quit and offering me a job starting in July of the following year. But in retrospect, that wasn't what was at risk at all. It was my relationship with God. It was my heart and the hearts of those around me. So perhaps Christ is calling you to risk your summer with one of these ministries. If you'd like to explore further, please come to an informational meeting tomorrow during chapel time, 10:35, in the fireside room of Lower Beamer. Additionally, starting Tuesday and through the rest of the week, there will be a table in Lower Beamer where you can talk with past participants or cabinet members. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for calling us to see things from your perspective and teaching us how to move this knowledge from our heads to our hearts. Let our love be expressed to you by our obedience, for your glory and for our joy. Amen. Thank you. Be blessed. You are dismissed.